Then memory came back and she closed her eyes and leaned back heavily against my arm as I held her. "Dead," she said. "Oh my God. What will we do?" Chapter 34. The remainder of that day, Thursday, August the 25th, is a sort of nightmare to remember. I had notified the police of Mrs. McMullen's visit, and then followed the usual long hours when nothing seemed to happen. Indeed, when everything was over and we knew that our killer would kill no more, I was to hear Herbert Dean say that a big crime case was like a war, a few dramatic moments and then hours and days of surface quiet and patient underground digging. So far the Crescent as a whole knew nothing of Holmes's death. No boy selling extras ever intruded on our sacred privacy, and both Mother and I had been asked to let the police make the announcement when they were ready. The result was an extremely peaceful if hot August afternoon, with Eben once again systematically cutting the grass, and our housemaids or parlourmaids or butlers, as the case might be, quite cheerfully doing the usual Thursday silver cleaning. To them I dare say the crimes were over and the excitement ended. Whatever they knew or suspected, the curtain was down and they were ready to go about their business again. It had been exciting, but it was not their play. They had been interested and terrified spectators, but no more than that. The result was that for all our bars and locks, for all our guards at night and the incessant clamor of the press for action on the part of the police as to the Crescent Place murderer, there was a definite relaxation of tension. Mary and Annie might, and actually did, barricade themselves on the third floor each night by putting a row of chairs on the staircase. But I know now that in most of the Crescent houses the attack on me was laid, either to a burglar after my grandmother's silver in the cedar room or to my having run head-on into an open door. That was due to Mrs. Talbot who, coming in early on the morning after it happened, had gone ponderously back to the guest wing and carefully inspected it. "That's what happened," she boomed. "This door was open and she ran into it in the dark. My George did that once and had to have 3 stitches. Who on earth would want to hurt Louisa? Louisa didn't carry the kitchen poker up with her," Mother said. "How do you know? Whose fingerprints were on it?" "I don't know anything to hold a mark like a brass-handled poker." But the poker had borne no prints, it seemed, not even mine. Nor could she account for the fact that even if I had run into a door, the bump was on the top and toward the back of my head. It was then to a Crescent still ignorant of this third tragedy and quietly going about its business, that mother returned rather late that afternoon. Her mourning veil looked rather the worse for wear, but she herself looked better than I had seen her look for a long time. She had, it appeared, not only gone to the morgue. She had lunched alone downtown for the first time in 20 years, a break in her routine so incredible that I almost gasped. It was quite pleasant, she said. The chicken salad was much better than Mary's. I must speak to her about it. It was Holmes, wasn't it, Mother? She nodded, taking off her hat. Yes, it was Holmes. Of course his uniform is missing. I shall have to buy a new one. But he looked very natural, considering everything. Quite natural. A hit-and-run driver, they say. But I cannot help thinking, Louisa, that he was taken by a definite act of Providence, and Mr. Sullivan quite agrees with me. You see, I suppose I can say this now, I had suspected something quite different. If Holmes killed Emily Lancaster. We don't know that it was Holmes, Mother, I said. You may have been right, you know. At least you ought to tell somebody what you suspected, or whom. It can't do any harm. But she refused with a gesture, and I could not induce her to tell me. In her mind the case was settled, the mystery solved. She was certain that he had killed Mrs. Lancaster before he took her on Thursday for her drive, and that all the family had been wrong about the time, and she was even more certain that on Sunday night he had escaped from a locked room and shot Miss Emily. This belief of hers was strengthened rather than weakened by the fact that the department had no record of Holmes's fingerprints. You know, Louisa, she said, the police have said all along that the murderer was a non-habitual criminal, and I dare say they'll find that he has that money out in that country place of his he used to talk about. It is all perfectly obvious. Outside of that one matter, of the suspicion which was now definitely and comfortably allayed, Mother was more garrulous that afternoon than I had ever seen her. Mr. Sullivan had taken her to see the police commissioner after they left the morgue, and she had been surprised to find that he was what she called a gentleman. Quite good-looking, she said. That is, he would have been, but he was suffering quite dreadfully from poison ivy. It seems he had got some on his hands and then rubbed his face.